So those savings add up to more money that families can spend at businesses. More money that businesses can spend hiring new workers. And the CBO now says that the Affordable Care Act will be cheaper than recently projected. Lower costs from coverage provisions will shrink our deficits by an extra $100 billion. So the bottom line is, under the Affordable Care Act, the share of Americans with insurance is up, the growth of healthcare costs is down. Hundreds of millions of Americans who already have insurance now have new benefits. And protections from free preventive care to freedom from lifetime caps on your care. No American with a pre-existing condition like asthma or cancer can be denied coverage. No woman can be charged more just for being a woman. Those days are over. And this thing is working. I've said before, this law won't solve all the problems in our healthcare system. We know we've got more work to do. But we now know for a fact that repealing the Affordable Care Act would increase the deficit. Raise premiums for millions of Americans. And take insurance away from millions more, which is why, as I've said before, I find it strange that the Republican position on this law is still stuck in the same place that it has always been. They still can't bring themselves to admit that the Affordable Care Act is working. They said nobody would sign up, they were wrong about that. They said it would be unaffordable for the country, they were wrong about that. They were wrong to keep trying to repeal a law that is working when they have no Alternative answer for millions of Americans with pre-existing conditions who would be denied coverage again. Or every woman who would be charged more for just being a woman again. I know every American isn't going to agree with this law. But I think we can agree that it's well past time to move on as a country and refocus our energy on the issues that the American people are most concerned about, and that continues to be the economy. Because these endless, fruitless repeal efforts come at a cost. The 50 or so votes Republicans have taken to repeal this law could have been 50 votes to create jobs by investing in things like infrastructure or innovation. Or 50 votes to make it easier for middle-class families to send their kids to college. Or 50 votes to raise the minimum wage. Or restore unemployment insurance that they let expire for folks working hard to find a new job. The point is, the repeal debate is and should be over. The Affordable Care Act is working. And I know the American people don't want us spending the next 2.5 years refighting the settled political battles of the last 5 years. They sent us here to repair our economy, to rebuild our middle class. And to restore our founding promise of opportunity, not just for a few, but for all. And as president, that's exactly what I intend to keep doing as long as I'm in this office. With that, I'll take some questions. Let's see who we got. Kathleen Hennessy of the LA Times. Question: Thanks, Mr. President. It sounds like there's been some development in the Ukraine talks in Geneva. I'm just wondering if you could describe your level of confidence in what this agreement is and how you can be sure that Russia will follow through, given some of the remarks from President Putin this morning. President Obama, I don't think we can be sure of anything at this point. I think there is the possibility, the prospect that diplomacy may de-escalate. The situation and we may be able to move towards what has always been our goal. Which is let the Ukrainians make their own decisions about their own lives. There was a meeting in Geneva, representatives of the Ukrainian government. The Russian government, the EU, as well as the United States. It was a lengthy, vigorous conversation. My understanding is that the Ukrainian Prime Foreign Minister gave a detailed and thorough presentation. About the reforms that they intend to introduce, including reforms that provide assurances for Ukrainians. Who live in eastern and southern Ukraine, that they will be fully represented, that their rights will be protected. That Russian speakers and Russian natives in Ukraine will have the full protection of the law. And my understanding, based on what I've heard, is that there was an acknowledgement. Within the meeting that the Ukrainian government in Kiev had gone out of its way to address a range of the concerns that may have existed in southern and eastern Ukraine. There was a promising public statement that indicated the need to disarm all irregular forces and militias and groups that have been occupying buildings. There was an offer of amnesty to those who would willingly lay down their arms. Evacuate those buildings, so that law and order could be restored in eastern and southern Ukraine. The Russians signed on to that statement. And the question now becomes, will, in fact, they use the influence that they've exerted in a disruptive way to restore some order so that Ukrainians can carry out an election? Move forward with the decentralization reforms that they proposed, stabilize their economy. And start getting back on the path of growth and democracy, and that their sovereignty will be respected. We're not going to know whether, in fact, there's follow-through on these statements for several days. And so today I spoke with Chancellor Merkel. Later on in the day I'm going to be speaking to David Cameron. We're going to be consulting with our European allies. Over the last week, we have put in place additional consequences that we can impose. On the Russians if we do not see actual improvement of the situation on the ground. And we are coordinating now with our European allies. My hope is that we actually do see follow-through over the next several days. But I don't think, given past performance, that we can count on that, and we have to be prepared to potentially respond to what continue to be efforts of interference by the Russians in eastern and southern Ukraine. If, in fact, we do see improvements, then that will obviously be a positive. In the meantime, we're going to make sure that we continue to help the Ukrainian government working with the IMF. The Europeans and others to stabilize their economy and to start reforming it. We're going to continue to work with our NATO allies to make sure that they are assured that we're going to meet our Article 5 obligations and that they are secure. And as I've said before, I think I had an interview with Major yesterday in which I mentioned this whole exercise by the Russians is not good for Russia either. There are, I think, a number of articles today indicating the degree to which an economy that was already stuck in the mud is further deteriorating because of these actions. And in my conversations with President Putin, I've emphasized the same thing. That we have no desire to see further deterioration of the Russian economy. On the other hand, we are going to continue to uphold the basic principle of sovereignty. And territorial integrity for all countries, and that there's a way for Ukraine to be independent. To be sovereign, and to have positive relationships with both the West and the East. With both its European neighbors and its Russian neighbors. And that's our primary concern. Maria Pina, Law Opinion. Question, thank you, Mr. President. I've got a hot spot for you here in the U.S. House Majority Leader. Eric Cantor said or claimed that you haven't learned how to work with them. And he's angry that you're attacking the GOP on the lack of movement on immigration reform. So I was wondering how you respond to that. And the second part to that. Right now you have hunger strikers across the street demanding relief for undocumented immigrants. And I was wondering if you can dispel the rumors or if there's a leak from the White House that you will. Make some sort of announcement in the coming weeks to expand that relief for the undocumented. Thank you. President Obama, well, I actually had a very pleasant conversation with Mr. Cantor yesterday. Question, really? President Obama, I did. You're always kind of surprised by the mismatch between press releases and the conversation. I wished. Him happy Passover. And what I said to him privately is something that I would share with him that I've said publicly. Which is there is bipartisan support for comprehensive immigration reform. It would strengthen our economy, it would help with our security. And it would provide relief to families who many of whom have lived here for years and who have children and family members who are U.S. citizens. And that Congress should act, and that right now what's holding us. Back is House Republican leadership not willing to go ahead and let the process move forward. So it was a pretty friendly conversation. I think in his press release, I gather he was referring to the observation that we'd made a day. Earlier that it had now been a year since the Senate had passed a strong bipartisan bill. And that although we had heard a lot of talk about the House Republicans being interested in doing something. Nothing had happened yet, and suggesting that we need some urgency here. I still feel the same way. I know there are Republicans in the House. As there are Republicans in the Senate, who know this is the right thing to do. I also know it's hard politics for Republicans because there are some in their base that are very opposed to this. But what I also know is that there are families all across the country who are experiencing great hardship and pain because this is not getting resolved. I also know that there are businesses around the country that could be growing even faster. That our deficits could be coming down faster, that we would have more customers in our shops, if we get this thing resolved.